All right, class. So far we have talked about some special classes and using methods and instantiating classes. We're going to talk about a special class today. We're going to talk about the math class in order to do some more complex mathematical operations that we weren't able to do with the built-in operators in Java. So let's get into what we can do. And we're going to talk about the math class today. The math class. And in particular, we're going to talk about a few methods within the math class that are going to be really useful for us, and some of these are actually testable on the AP exam. So the first one we are going to discuss is math.absolute value, ABS, and within that we can put a double. We can also put a double or an integer, but it will accept a double. So that's the largest number that it will take, the largest type that it will take. Math.absolute value of this. And as you would guess, it returns the absolute value of num. Returns absolute, spell that right. Absolute, there we go, value of num. That's pretty straightforward. The next one is math.pow. Math.pow. And this takes in two doubles. And it will take in a double as our base. And it will take in another double as our exponent. And this will return for us base, let me do it this way, base to the power of exponent. So base to the power of exponent. You can also put integers in here, no problem. It will also work just like absolute value will. The next one is math.square root. And it looks like this, math.sqrt. And then we put in some number here. And we'll just have double number. And all three of these, I'll mention again, are overloaded, so they can take in integers. Double num, and this will return the square root of num. Okay, and we have one more, math.random. Now this does not take any arguments, don't need a semicolon there, and this returns a random number, a sort of random number, from 0 to 1 not inclusive. So if we're going to notate that in terms of our math class, it'll be 0 inclusive, comma 1 not inclusive. So it's really 0 to 1.999 or 0.099999. 0 to 0.9999999. All the way until you reach the end of what's possible in a double. Okay, how do we use these? What do they look like in use? the key is that we don't have to instantiate our math class in order to create these. So these are actually what are called static methods. We'll learn more about static later, but basically what it means is it belongs to the class and not the method or not an object itself. So we don't create a new object. We simply write math with a capital M dot absolute, and then we give it the parameters and it will do the whole thing for us. We don't have to create a new math object. So let's take a look at that in practice. In practice, it would look something like this. Let's say I create a double, and we'll call this double hex. We'll call this double hex. And we'll give double hex a value of 16. And then we're going to create a new variable, double, and we'll call this double root. And we can set root, we'll give him the value of math dot square root of hex. And just for fun, we'll do a system dot out dot println of root. All right, and let's trace this really quick. So over here, we're going to have out, we're going to have root, and we're going to have hex. Okay, so our hex starts at 16. Root. We're going to take the square root of hex. That will give us square root of 16 is 4.0. And that means that our system.out.println will print a 4.0 for us. So this is the notation that we're going to use for all of these. Anytime you need to use a mathematical function, you're going to use math dot and then the mathematical function you need, pass the parameters to that method, and then it will return some value. Let's talk about math.random. How do we use that in our code to get random values other than 0 to 1? There are two ways to do this. So let's talk about random values. So if we think about the number line like this, so we start at 0 and we go up to some number, right? Let's say we go to 0 to 100. Okay. So first things first, if we think about 0 to 1 as our random values, so our random value generates to here. These are our random numbers. It's only 0 to 1. That creates a problem if we're trying to create something from 0 to 100. So how do we fix this? There are two techniques. The first technique I like to call stretching. So we're going to stretch the number line. We're going to take that 0 to 1. We're going to take any of the random numbers that are in here, and we need to stretch it so that it goes all the way to here, right? So we need our random numbers to go from this little thing and stretch it all the way out to the big 100. And the way that we do that is with multiplication. So multiply. So if we wanted a random value, let's say double, we'll call it 0 hundo. right? 0 to 100. If we want 0 to 100, if we want a random number in there, the way that we're going to write it is 0 equals math.random. Okay, and then we're going to multiply it. So then we multiply it by 100. And now we've taken whatever value comes out of math.random and we've stretched it by 100 points. So we've taken it from 1 to 100. And actually, if you think about it, it's really not 1 to 100. It's 1 or 0 to 99.99999999999. We haven't actually gotten to 100. Now, what if we wanted to go from 1 to 100? Now we need to do something different. So our first technique was to stretch, and our next technique is to shift. So our shifting, we use addition. So let's come up with a new example here. So say, for example, that I want to find, so here's my number line, starting at 0. Let's say I want to find a random number from, say, 20 to 30. Somewhere between 20 and 30. This is the range that I'm looking for right here. But my random number generator only creates random numbers from 0 to 1. So we have one technique for bringing our random number range and stretching it. Think for a moment, if you can, what will we need to do to get a random range between 20 and 30? Well, we stretch it, and then we're going to have to shift it. So we'll say double 2030. And we're going to set that, we're going to give that the value of our math.random. And we're first going to multiply our math.random times 10. And then I'm going to add 20 to it to shift. This will get me 20 to 29. I'll let you think about how to correct it if we want to get 20 to 30. That will be part of your assignments. So this is how we do it. We do the stretch and the shift. So this is stretch, and this is shift. Definitely going to be a part of the AP exam, understanding how to stretch and shift these. If I wanted this to be an integer, and maybe I wanted only whole numbers between 20 and 30, then I'm going to have to use my friend, the cast. So I may need to cast this to an integer here if I wanted only whole numbers. So we now have 4 tools. We now have our whole numbers tool. So this is our whole numbers by casting. We have our stretching tool to expand our number line to the range that we need. And then we also have the shifting tool to move that stretched number line along, or that number sequence rather, along the number line. So those are the math methods that you need to know within the math class. We have 4 of them. We have, just to review, math.absolute, math.pow, math.square root, and math.random. going to be very useful for this course. It's going to be very important for knowing these four in particular on the AP exam. All right, I will see you guys in